Okay, take it away. Thank you.
Can you all see the PowerPoint?
Yes, sir.
All right, Ken, why don't you start us off?
Well, so I just want to say thanks to everybody for inviting us because it's an important thing that the port does, and quite frankly, it really is the in my mind the best run and the best mission public agency in the state are the port authorities. Our job is completely and 100% economic development. We try to maintain focus. I will say in the outset that I am absolutely thrilled with the management of this. I think Rob Fix is the best executive director in the state, and I've said that often. The way that we stick to our mission and the way that we are port centric and don't wander too far from our mission is a tribute to his leadership and his guidance and your commission. I think you see the three commissioners there out of the three districts. Probably the best mix of commissioners that you can imagine for a port like this, as diverse as they come. I'm as far right as Michael Shepard is left, and you've got Bobby in the middle who keeps us both in check. I will say that the three of us work pretty well as a team. We typically have unanimous decisions. There's been maybe a half a dozen to a dozen decisions where they haven't been unanimous, and those are typically philosophical divergencies. But for the most part, we're focused on just making sure the business of the port stays the business of the port. Both Michael Shepard and I are up for election this year. We'll have to declare by May whether or not we're going, and you can see the boundary lines of the districts outlined here. Rob? So these are the basic functions or the basic geographical locations that we've got in the port. We've got the harbor up in Blaine. We've got the Sumas International Cargo Terminal up in Sumas, a very small area, but it is there and it is part of the port. We've got the airport that is under our jurisdiction, the transportation center, which is basically Amtrak and transportation hub down in Fairhaven, the cruise terminal, which is where the Alaska Ferry goes in and out of. You'll see our shipping terminal just off of that for commercial activities as well. And then we've got our waterfront district, which is where the GP site and related things are located, and where we did a major cleanup. And then we've got Squalicum Harbor, which is where we have most of the boats for Bellingham. So this is where kind of get to toot our horn a little bit. We have not had a property tax increase since I've been a commissioner. You can see where the property taxes have come on a typical $400,000 home since 2013. So I was going to throw out some kudos to Commissioner Dan Robbins. He was a part of the commission that was in that 2013 era. But you can see a steady decrease in the property taxes since we've been there. I took office in I was elected in 2017, 2018, and we continued to draw that down. The property taxes go to pay for the items listed on this slide. We pay for our general obligation bonds, our GNO bonds, for open spaces, pays for the commission expenses, all of our environmental programs, our economic development programs, our waterfront and acquisition site, our meeting and our corporate events, which typically the 4th of July and those kind of events, little scale down this year, and our public infrastructure. But we have held the line on taxes. Wanted to note that our GO bonds have gone down steadily every year. We've been able to pay them off. I think one of the benefits that Executive Director Fix brings to the table is he's an accountant and a damn good one. And every year when we're faced with cutting a budget, he's always able to meet it or beat it. So we've been able to maintain our property tax levy and not increase our taxes since we've been there. And we brought our obligation bond down to about 3.7 million from where it was when I took over, which was about $5.5 to $6 million.
7.5, Ken. 7.5 when you took over, down to 3.7 now.
So we've had that general obligation bond just in the term of office. So the amount of debt has been coming down. So when you look at a well-run business, that's what you want to see. You want to see that you're able to maintain within your expenses, do the job that you were expected to do with less resources, bring your debt down steadily, which has been what we've been a success at doing here at the port. Anybody got questions along the way? This is not a monologue.
Yeah, we like these to be interactive. I'll just add on the debt service side that we also issue what's called revenue bonds. So we have two types of debt. We have general obligation, which cover kind of general things of the port, and then we have specific revenue bonds. So when you saw us expand the airport in 2010, 2012 era, we used revenue bonds for that. And that was the only time since I've been at the port since 2008 that we've expanded our debt, because we took out new debt to do that airport. But the revenue bonds have gone down as well. And our debt position is probably the envy of every major port in the state of Washington. We have a ton of debt capacity. And I like to look at that debt capacity as being a rainy day fund. If we get ourselves in big trouble, we got something we can go to. But outside of that, we want to make sure we pay our bills as we go.
And that includes working through this time of COVID. We've had a very successful port operation through COVID. We've had a tremendous response from our tenants in the real estate division. We've been able to maintain the budget that we established. We've actually been able to do more with less. More with less. Okay, next one.
So real estate division, this is kind of the cash cow of the port. We own a lot of real estate in Blaine. You saw the real estate in Sumas on that earlier map, and then obviously real estate around the airport, and then real estate around the waterfront in both Bellingham proper and over in Fairhaven. Picture there of Woodstone. They make pizza ovens there. They're shipped all over the world. You probably have heard this story before, but I used to be in the hotel business, and I was doing a hotel remodel in Bermuda, of all places, and a Woodstone oven showed up. And I was all excited talking to the chef. I was like, yeah, Woodstone oven, that's from Bellingham. He's looking at me like, where's Bellingham? So a great success story here locally. Again, all over the world, their product goes. The industrial picture there is a new building that was just put up along Rotor. That's development being done by Jeff Kochman. In the background there, you can barely see the All-American Marine building, which we're going to see another picture of some of their boats later. The lower right picture is the pier in Fairhaven. We just put about $10 million into that. Piers take a lot of abuse from both the ships and from the water. And so it was that reached the end of its life cycle, but we replaced a large section of wood pier with what you're seeing there as a concrete pier. Real estate, as you can see there, has a number of businesses located on its property, a couple hundred, and then that supports over 7,000 jobs. This is the All-American Marine manufactured vessels. So the one in the upper left there and the lower right are the same vessel. They were built for Argosy cruises down in Puget Sound. Prior to COVID, you could go down there and hop on there and do a dinner cruise. And then the King County water taxis in the upper right corner. So all three of those vessels were built at their new facility. This is a major success story because when All-American Marine was located down in Fairhaven at the end of Harris Avenue there, they did not have the space to build these size vessels. And they were getting orders, or people are inquiring about building these size vessels. So we got together with them and we found a new location for them and a different way to launch. And prior to, they launched on what's called a marine railway in Fairhaven. And that was a pretty expensive endeavor and very labor intensive. Now they launch on a trailer right in the Squalicum Harbor boat launch, just like you would launch a 20-foot bayliner. So their launch costs have gone way down. And you can see the launch in the upper left corner there, how they pulled it, the bolt up with a truck. They'll have a couple extra semis on hand to help if they're pulling the boat out of the water to help pull it up there. If they're putting it in, just to make sure it doesn't get away from them. So typically, depending on the size of the vessel, there's anything from 2 to 3 semis hooked up to that vessel to launch it. Number of divers get in the water, and it's a really long process. It's kind of like watching paint dry because it doesn't move very fast. But it is fascinating to watch a vessel that size. I think that Argosy vessel is about 120 feet. And to see that being launched right alongside a guy's 25-foot fishing boat, it's pretty cool.
I'm going to chime in and just say, this is one of the areas where real estate at the port is a very important aspect. This was just a vacant piece of ground. We were able to take this company from one location, move them to a new one and a new facility so that they could compete with other companies that were outbidding them in the Gulf area, where real estate is a lot less expensive, regulations a lot less intensive. And we allowed this local company to stay here rather than move to someplace like the Gulf Coast to build their boats, just because we built them a building and we were able to increase the size, increase the capacity. And today they are going to be building one of the first hybrid boats to be launched and to move into the San Francisco Bay Area. And they're at the forefront of the technology in these kind of ferries and in the hybrid type fuel systems for these boats, even in the hydro energy sector. So I just think, you know, looking at the port as a real estate is not, it's not just that. We look at it as business people, is how do we take this asset and turn it into something that's going to create something better and create the kind of workforce that we want in this city. And All American Marine is probably one of our biggest success stories. I'm a salesman.
Yeah, perfectly said, Ken. I mean, ports are in the business of two things: transportation and creating jobs. And here we've got a local company creating a lot of jobs and providing water taxis to King County and to Pierce County. So it's a perfect fit for a port. Moving on to the airport. This airport was a lot more fun to talk about last year at this time. I'm going to share some numbers with you. It's not so much fun to talk about now, but what a cool picture this was. And here's why it wasn't so much fun to talk about anymore. You can see that this is commercial passengers only. So this is primarily Allegiant and Alaska Air, or Horizon, which is owned by Alaska. You can see that they're down 70% on people getting on planes and people getting off planes. The industry as a whole throughout the nation are seeing about a 60% decrease in employment. So we're hit harder than most, and that's strictly because the border is closed. About half of our customers at the airport come out of Canada. That number shrinks a little bit each year as Whatcom County grows, but you can figure about half come out of Canada to use our airport. And obviously they're not allowed to cross the border right now, so they're not flying out of our airport. This slide shows you the general aviation and the commercial activity. So on the far left, air carrier over 60 seats, that's going to be your Alaskas and your Horizons and your Allegiants. Air taxi is more like a Kenmore Air type service. And then you've got your general aviation itinerant, which is someone from out of town, and based, which has someone who has a plane here. So you can see that everyone took a hit, but the GA it took the least amount of hit, and the government, which is actually mostly Border Patrol, actually increased on there by about 26%. So that's mostly Customs and Border Patrol that are based out of our airport. So not a good year to be in the airport business.
And just keep in mind that a lot of our airport traffic was Canadian, and we did to a lot of summer destinations. We did Vegas. They do, Allegiant, our biggest carrier, does a lot of those summer destinations. And without that Canadian traffic coming down, there's no way for us to keep that fed. In addition to that, a couple of years ago, they expanded the airport in Everett, and that drained us of a lot of this capacity. There were a lot of customers that we had coming up from Seattle that found this to be a better destination. But with the opening of the airfield down there in Payne, it took away a tremendous amount of customer base that we had, and essentially, I would say, took the knees out from underneath us on a couple of routes that we had. Alaska was one of those where they would fly from here to Hawaii. That completely went down south, along with most of the platform that we had here for their planes. So they're at a minimal level. On that note, I just want to make sure everybody understands we have got the best airport director, and I don't say that lightly. Sunil Harman knows the ins and outs of the airplane business and the airport business, and there's no question in my mind that this airport will be back with or without the Canadian border in a very short period of time.
So Ken's giving you a little hint there. There's big stuff coming out of the airport here. So keep your eyes and ears peeled. We can't talk much about it today, but there's big stuff coming. And Sunil is incredible. He's one of those guys that when his resume hit your desk, you're like, home run. We knew it was the right fit. The only reason Sunil's here, his parents live up in Vancouver. So he was down in Florida. His parents were getting older. He decided he wanted to retire in a job that was near his parents. So that's why he's here, and we're just damn lucky to have him. He's very well respected in the airport business. He's worked in all four corners of the U.S. So he's run an airport in San Diego, one up in New York, one in Florida, and now up here in Bellingham, Washington.
And the most amazing thing is he's got all of the, it's like a big chessboard, just Sunil. He's got all the players on this chessboard, and he knows exactly who's going to move where and when and how they're going to move and who inside those organizations are going to move. So he is absolutely the best possible person for an airport like ours.
Aviation is an amazing business. It's a total chess game. And if you build a hotel or a restaurant, your location is wherever you put that physical facility. When you have an airplane, you can move that airplane to whatever market you want or think is best. And the airlines do that. They're moving these planes constantly all the time. And so he's kind of on top of where they're moving planes to. So we try to figure out how we get in the mix there. Airports are incredibly capital intensive, and the capital needs don't go away just because we're in the middle of a pandemic. Things still break, pavement wears out. So I've made a list of all our construction projects we're going to be doing over the next 5 years here. Let me just explain really quick that funding FAA AIP on the far right there, that's called Airport Improvement Projects. And that's money the FAA gives us back from taxes they collect on your tickets. And they'll give it back to us to do projects with. It used to be that we had to provide 20% matching funds to those. But they've reduced it now to 0 or 10%. So we've ramped up the amount of AIP we're going to spend. We used to kind of push back on not spending it because we didn't want to provide that match. But now with free money, we're all in. So we're going to do a couple extra projects in there. Some of it is, it's all necessary. Some of it's more necessary than others as you start to have runway safety issues. Those things are obviously have to be addressed. But you can see we've got, a good, probably almost $25 million worth of projects there. And finally, a new development at the airport for general aviation traffic or for corporate jets. So the Alpha Air Park is going where the old Wang site was, the Washington Air National Guard site. So that site, that building is going to be demolished, and then they're going to put in a couple of hangars there for corporate jets. The lease is being done with Bellingham Aviation Services, and they'll operate and run this and lease out the space and basically just lease the ground for us. So the port's not putting up the capital to build these hangars. It's privately being put up. We're just providing the ground under a lease. And you can see it has runway access, and that's obviously really important when you have a hangar. Any questions on real estate or the airport? So we run 2 marinas, one in Blaine and one in Squalicum. We're going to spend a little time talking about those. We run a shipping terminal. Our marine terminals division consists of both the shipping terminal here in Bellingham at the end of Cornwall, and it also consists of the ferry terminal in Fairhaven, and the train station in Fairhaven is actually part of our marine terminals division as well. A couple pictures there. This is an overhead view of Squalicum Harbor. You see the inner harbor and then the outer harbor. Picture of the ferry terminal there, and then a picture of the entrance to the inner harbor.
I'm going to jump in here and just say, go back just a slide real quick. You look at these marinas, and all of them had some kind of an environmental issue that had to be overcome before they could become fully utilized. We're still dealing with a lot of those, and progress has been made. And as we free up some of the space as the cleanups occur, we're finding that they are becoming more useful, and we're bringing more businesses into those and have a lot more interest in businesses coming into those. So when you look at these marinas, just know there's a lot of underground cleanup activity that we've used a lot of the federal Whatcom money to clean up to make these operational the way they are today. In the lower right corner, you see a picture of the Bellwether Peninsula. So the people who've been around Bellingham for a while know that the inner harbor dredge material is what created the Bellwether Peninsula. So when they dredged out the inner harbor to create that marina, they took all the dredge spoils and they created Bellingham, or the Bellwether Peninsula there. My wife was born and raised in Bellingham, so I came up here in 1997 and got married to her. There's only one building, which is now Hearthfire, was called something else at that time, maybe the Marina Restaurant. That was the only building that was on that peninsula. And now you look at it today, 23 years later. And it takes a while for developments like this to happen in Bellingham.
I show this as an example for people who are impatient on the waterfront on the old GP site and how fast that's developing. We only develop about 100,000 square feet of commercial space a year in Bellingham. So it takes a while to absorb big, giant developments. It's not as fast as people would like. So some work going on up in Blaine. I've got some pictures here of sawtooth repairs. You can see the length of the pile that they're driving there. I just thought that was kind of a cool picture, very dramatic on the length of that. And then you'll see new sheet pile, that corrugated black sheet pile that they're putting in to kind of hold the earth back and create a hard edge there. They've actually separated the land from the sawtooth right now. So there's normally you can drive right out on it, but you can't right now because the sheet pile need to be replaced. And then we'll put the piers back in over the top of that. That work is undergoing today. So this is a current project being done today. We signed a lease with a company called ABC Recycling. Ken can talk more about who that company is, but you can see some stats there about what we're expecting of them. They bought some property up off Marine Drive, the old cement plant. They didn't buy the whole cement plant, but they bought a portion of that property, and they're going to create a big steel or metal recycling facility up there. And they plan on barging and shipping some of that stuff in and out of our shipping terminal. So they signed a lease with us, and just a picture of the terminal that they're going to operate off of.
And the big deal here is that we're now going to be using this, but it hasn't been used in a long time to create work. So we're actually going to be doing what the port is supposed to be doing on this property, and that is moving materials. ABC is a huge recycler out of Canada, and they've had the need to move things into the U.S. They're finding a lot of their sourcing coming here, and this way they don't have to go across the border. So we're the first stop on the way south for them to handle their steel. It's dirty jobs at its core because it's just massive movement of steel. But the amount of material that they move and the quality of that company means that they're going to be here for a little bit. The fact that they've decided to invest in us is a big deal because it puts some of our longshoreman workers to work on those docks, moving materials the way we're supposed to be moving them. And the operation is absolutely necessary for the ABC company. We're glad to have them. You guys have got any questions on this? I still feel like we're talking to each other. Rob and I, we do this all the time. Robin,
I have a question.
Robin's not allowed to talk.
Oh, it's Ellen here. Will you be putting cranes at this ABC processing, or?
You know, if they use cranes, Ellen, and thank you for that question. If they use cranes, they'll be more mobile cranes. We won't put fixed cranes in place. Our goal is to be a niche. We want to operate in a space that's not really dominated by either Vancouver, Canada, Seattle, Tacoma area, where they have tons and tons of container cranes. And we want to have room for break bulk and bulk type business. And that can be anywhere from sending Caterpillar equipment to Russia, or it could be bringing in grains from a different country. So you'll see rock down there right now. If you've seen some of the rock coming through town, you'll see a truck with one huge giant rock on it. That's all going down to the Columbia River to build the jetty down there. And that goes over the face of our pier here. So a good question, but if we have cranes out there, it's temporary in nature, just based on the cargo being loaded or unloaded.
And the nature of this material is it's basically what they call a prepared material. So this is material that's going directly into a mill somewhere. So somebody has taken steel from somewhere, brought it in and put it into a spec that meets a mill's requirement. And so ABC is just getting it to the next market location from here. We're glad to have them.
Do you guys have a timeline on when ABC is going to be ramping up there, or have they already started work out there?
Well, they've just closed on their acquisition on Marine Drive, so they're a little ways out because they have to construct that facility before they'll be using our terminal. So I think we're probably 3 years out from seeing them be active on the terminal. Now, that being said, that doesn't mean you're not going to see a load here and there going between that period of time. But I suspect 3 years from now, you'll see a lot more consistent business out of them. And that's actually good timing because that's about when the rock business should start to kind of decrease a little bit.
And I'll say that really the biggest time frame factor is going to be the city of Bellingham a lot of the permitting is going to need to be done to get all of these things accomplished. That seems to be the case with just about everything that we're doing on the waterfront anymore, that if you're looking for a delay place, it's going to be the city of Bellingham and their permitting department.
That can't be emphasized enough. And this is frustration, not just with the port, but I think everyone trying to build anything anywhere is getting frustrated with how long it takes to get a permit. It's getting ridiculously long. So we're going to have to address that if we want economic development to continue and go forward.
And these are relatively simple operations that shouldn't take all that long. But the reason we project 3 years out is because we can't imagine the city doing it any quicker.
It took us a year to permit a bathroom on the waterfront. So if you've been down the pump track, you've seen we've got porta potties down there. We're trying to replace those with a bathroom fixed in place, and we couldn't get a permit to do it. A simple bathroom. They couldn't figure out how to give us a permit to build a bathroom.
And I'm going to add to that, since we're complaining. We proposed a container village down there for the waterfront to bring people down there in the absence of having any kind of retail or any activity on the waterfront. And the container villages are all temporary structures. They're all containers that could be used for retail or could be used for any kind of food services or bike repair shops, that kind of thing. And we could have put those down there last summer, but the city refused to give us the permits in a timely manner. So now we're looking at this summer. You will see something down there this summer. I'll get to that when we get to the waterfront. But there was absolutely no reason for us not to be able to do that. We also had a proposal to put picnic tables out, space them about 10 feet apart. You know, you put 50, 100 tables out there so that the restaurants in downtown Bellingham, their clientele had a place to go. We could not get the city to agree to allow us to do something as simple as that. Meanwhile, they're closing off city streets, you know, and allowing those kind of restaurant opportunities. So we're trying like crazy, but we're kind of banging our heads against the wall with the permitting department.
And John, I'll call on you in just a second, but we got to be careful here because I forgot Dave Gallagher was on here. We may never, ever get a permit.
You sense our frustration, right?
John, your turn.
Well, I'm hearing the same thing about my city, and it just puzzles me. I mean, are they going to say they're overworked, or what are the core values that will slow these projects down that are so good for everybody? I mean, it's a mystery to me when I hear this from any city. What's going on there? It doesn't make any sense.
No, we're with you, John. We're as puzzled as you are. We all want the economy to move forward. We want people to have jobs, and it seems like we stop growth just for the sake of stopping growth. And but that's probably enough on that subject. Let me point out here, if you can see my cursor, this is what we called a stub pier, and it's a barge ramp essentially. Currently, the rock I mentioned going down the Columbia is going over the face of the pier, and it's really heavy rock. So if they drop one, it does a lot of damage to the pier. We recently got some MARAD money, I'm going to talk about on the next slide, to fix this kind of barge ramp so that we can start to load and unload barges right from this area. And that'll be a great help when we get the rock, or as we continue to load and unload rock business. So here's about that MARAD grant I just talked about. Maritime Administration grant from the federal government awarded to the port in the amount of about $7 million. So we're going to use that to do a couple things. One is to repair and replace that stub pier I just showed you. But in this picture, you see a ship, and in between the ship and the pier, you see 3 red rectangles. And those rectangles have big giant tires on the outside of them. And those are there to stand the ship 15 feet off of the pier. And the reason they have to stand 15 feet off the pier is because there's some dredging needs to be done so they can go right up next to the pier. So a bunch of sediment is sitting next to the pilings that hold that pier up, and the ship can't get any closer because of that sediment. So part of the $7 million is going to go to clean up that dredging work, and the other portion is going to go to clean that stub pier or that rail span that I talked about.
The end result of this is that we're actually using these port commercial facilities for what they were intended. And that is to move materials in and out. Our long-term goal is to make sure that we combine our economic development for not just maritime activities, but we also provide opportunities for the county and our farmers to move commodities in and out of the port as we go along. The vision here is that we become a tool for the entire county not just for the maritime industry, not just for the steel industry, not just for, you know, this heavy bulk moving material. We've got to service the entire county. And the goal is to reach up into the farming community and to bring those commodities out of here as well.
So the Port of Bellingham is responsible for countywide economic development. We're one of, I think, 3 or 4 ports in the state that is what's called the ADO, the Associated Designated Organization. Basically, that means it's the organization the state has set as in charge of economic development for their county. And we've got that privilege. So I just wanted to show you kind of what we've done during the pandemic as far as economic development goes. We recruited 3 pretty significant businesses, and this isn't all that we recruited, but these are the bigger ones. And then retained another, 4 or 5 significant businesses that needed to grow and tried to help them grow. So our economic development team consists of 4 people. They work Sumas, Ferndale, Blaine, Bellingham, all over the county. They do work, and their job is just to create jobs. So if that means moving a company in, if it means keeping a company that's already here, and in some cases, it means investing in infrastructure. So one of the things the port is working on is a high priority is getting broadband or fiber out to some of our rural areas that don't have it. And you'll know that some of these rural areas like Glacier have schools that have very spotty, if no connectivity at all. And our goal is to get them some fiber optic cable so that they can have better bandwidth. We're doing this port-wide. I mean, statewide ports are doing this. And we're going to do it in Bellingham. We're going to partner with private sector companies rather than putting our own fiber in the ground. We're going to partner with people like Zayo, Ziply, Wave, and we're going to help them put new fiber in or replace their existing fiber so that it's not as spotty and it's more reliable. And that's a big endeavor for us over the next 3 years. All right, let's go to the waterfront district. So here we've got a couple overhead shots, and what was the date on that? It's about 3 weeks ago on a Saturday, and it's the Dick's food truck that showed up from Seattle. So the Dick's truck is right here, that little white truck there, and the line to get a Dick's burger starts here, goes all the way here. This picture was taken from a plane. You can see the line ends right here in the plane shot. But an hour earlier, that line extended from there all the way back to here. So in the upper left corner, you can see how far the line goes. Just to get a Dick's hamburger.
And that's an indication of how much demand there is for activity down there on the waterfront. And if we could just, like I said, if we could just get our container village down there, we could be servicing a lot of people who have a desire to come down there. They came down for Dick's. Yeah, I mean, obviously high demand there. So we got a lot of interim stuff we want to do. In this right-hand picture where my cursor is, you see this big pit here. That's Harcourt's development. They're going to be building 3 residential buildings there. The granary building is just outside of this shot. What we want to do is we want to provide interim uses for people to come down here and use the space in the meantime before it's developed, because we're 50 years from this thing being fully developed. So to get some interim uses on this, we're going to put that container village in that Ken talked about. We're going to put a beer garden in. We're going to expand the pump track, which is hugely popular. And we're going to put a skate park in. So here's kind of a map of where all that goes. Here you've got the granary building. Here you've got the construction of the apartments and condos, Waypoint Park. This parking lot's going to be built because the Harcourt just signed a lease with a second floor tenant here in the granary building that requires 100-some spaces. They're called Korber. They're out of Germany and they do transportation logistics. And they're fitting out their space right now, and then they'll be building the parking lot. We've noticed a number of skateboarders that congregate underneath Chestnut here. And when I went down there a couple months ago, I saw some what I thought were kind of dangerous conditions that they're using as stunts. So we pulled all those out of there. We started working with them on having things we think are acceptable down there. Now, the city of Bellingham technically has that property. I think it's a port property, but it's a right of way by the city because they have Chestnut on it. So we're currently working with the city on an agreement that allows us to use this as a skate park. So right now it's an unofficial skate park, but after we come to an agreement with the city, we'll make it an official skate park, and then we'll work with the local clubs on building out features that meet our safety requirements, but still are fun for them. So we don't want to be the old curmudgeon that says no skateboarding under the bridge. We just want to make sure it's safe to do so.
So you'll see a skate park built there. You can see the outline of the existing pump track. Here's an expansion we've kind of kicked around. We've kicked around building a bike skills area in this area. And then this area right here, outlined in red, is being leased by Culshan Brewing to put a beer garden in. And we suspect that'll be open maybe April, May timeframe. And the container village will go right behind that. Somewhere in this general vicinity is where we'll put those containers. Now we just ran plumbing in there, so water, sewer, and electric. And we ran into a lot of foundations we didn't even know were under the ground. In one case, a 36-inch thick slab. So we're trying to do some test digging right now to figure out where we can put those containers to still get services to them without having to break through 36 inches of concrete, which obviously drives the cost up exponentially. So obviously there's hurdles to everything we do. That's just something we need to overcome. It's an old industrial site. There's old building foundations where we didn't even know there were buildings. But we'll get through those, and hopefully this summer you'll be able to go down there, have a beer, get some food out of a food truck or out of a container, and just enjoy watching people ride the pump track.
And I want to jump on the greenery building. It was a lot of criticism from Hardcore about the ability to lease up that building in a timely fashion. I will say that what they wound up doing was moving a company called Corber in, as Rob described earlier. They essentially made an acquisition of a company here called High Jump. It's a logistics company, but it kept Corber from putting 120 jobs elsewhere. So they're moving this company down. It's going to expand. It's going to create another 120 jobs for that waterfront. And it's a high-tech position that's going to bring in a little bit of expertise that's also going to help with companies like Faith Life, because it's going to create more of that high-tech expertise in the area, and it's going to be a draw. So the granary building on our waterfront has turned into something better than what I thought it was. I was highly critical of Harcourt early on for not leasing that up. And they could have easily gone in and lowered the price on that space and and robbed somebody from one location and put it into another one. But what they did was they found a really quality one that's actually going to add 120 new jobs onto the waterfront into that building. Wanted to promote that a little bit.
So when you look at this map, you've got Granary Avenue here, you've got Laurel here. Laurel goes all the way out to Cornwall. We're working with the Whatcom Community Foundation on a development on the corner of Laurel and Cornwall. And they would put in a 7-story building, which would be mixed use. Mostly first, second floor would be some sort of public or public use. And then the stories above that would be worker housing. So not necessarily low income housing, but something that's affordable for someone who gets their first job. And then the buildings behind it that you see over here are being looked at as being some sort of a food campus, commercial food campus. One of the ideas we really like is, the bread lab down in Skagit, having something like that up here. So the Whatcom Community Foundation is working with a number of organizations to kind of program this area. And they're working with us to get a lease going or to sell them the property so that they can do this development.
And this fits into the desire to tie in the agricultural community out in the county with what we do here on the waterfront, because it's going to take a lot of those agricultural products and put them into a food campus. The hope is that they'll be able to distribute food and be able to put kitchens in there that will do food service throughout the county. But this also does fit one more requirement. We are under an obligation to put some low income housing. And this actually fits into that plan and satisfies that need for that waterfront.
So one of the other things the port did is we started up a ferry service to Point Roberts. No good deed goes unpunished. We had a lot of people at Point Roberts say they wanted to get to the mainland. They couldn't drive through Canada anymore. They needed to get to their doctor. They needed to get to Costco. And there was no way for them to get over here. So we started up a ferry service. It runs on Tuesdays and Fridays. 2 times a day. It goes out there and back in the morning, out there and back in the afternoon. We switch the times around based on how much daylight is available. The ferry gets canceled a lot because of bad weather. So yesterday was Tuesday morning run was canceled because of high winds, but we did do the afternoon run. This is a free service to anyone who wants to take it. And we're not limiting it just to Point Roberts folks. We're not limiting it just to Whatcom County residents. It's open to anyone who wants to get out there. There's been some criticism on that. Some of the Point Roberts folks want this to be strictly a Point Roberts only service. You have to show residents of Point Roberts to ride it. Port of Bellingham is a county-wide agency. We don't think that's right. We think if there's a realtor in Bellingham wants to get out there and show a house in Point Roberts, they should be allowed to ride the ferry to do so. So that's kind of our thinking on that. But we're going to continue that service for as long as the commission tells me we are, but I'm guessing until that Canadian border opens back up. That's it for our presentation. Thank you for having us. Always fun to talk about the Port of Bellingham. I'm available for questions if you didn't want to ask them here. My email is robf@portofbellingham.com. You can call me on the main switchboard. A lot of people have my cell phone. Feel free to use that. Anytime you want to talk about the port, you have an idea, you have a criticism, I'm here to hear it. John.
Hey, I want to thank you very much for preparing this fabulous presentation. Really learned a lot today. Wondering if you could send us a PDF of the PowerPoint. We could post it if you'd like. We have been recording and we'll share. Anybody else have questions for Ken? And go ahead, John Muchler.
Yeah, I think I know the answer, but I wanted to be sure. The property taxes that continue to decrease, is that because you're annually always asking a fixed amount and it just gets distributed to a larger group of property owners? Is that the basic math there?
Yeah, good question, John. I should have commented on this. So what we do, here's our philosophy on the property tax, and it's kind of a guessing game to get it right, as you know, because the mayor of Ferndale. But what we do is our philosophy is we don't want you to pay another dollar to the port each year in tax. So we try to keep you flat. We take advantage of new construction. So instead of turning in, $7 million each year, we turn in $7 million plus the new construction. And in theory, that should keep you about flat. And then the amount you pay on per thousand is going down because the assessed value of your home is going up. But we don't want you to have to pay more every time your assessed value goes up. So your flat dollar amount should stay about the same. And by way of example, in 2008, we collected $6.9 million in property tax from Whatcom County. This year, we'll collect about 7.4. And that is almost all due to new construction. So you see a $500,000 increase over, 13 years? And that's almost all due to new construction.
So I think I got it. So I'm going to just say it this way. So the assessments go up every couple of years, but the actual fixed dollar amount, whatever it is, $100 a year, $200 a year, will roughly stay the same, even though my home is increasing more.
Correct. Good way to put
thank
that.
you. Thank you. You're the only people playing that game in town. Way to go.
For sure. No, we are the only government agency in Whatcom County that doesn't increase your taxes every year. We only take the new construction as an increase. In some years, we didn't take the new construction. That's why it was only 500,000, because there's years we didn't even take that.
Very good.
Yeah, we're proud of that one. We try to run efficiently. We try to use your money wisely. I'm a former private sector guy. I know what it's like to run a business. I don't want to be taxing people for no reason. We want to make sure your money is being put to good work.
And there is a huge demand on this port. We've got a lot of projects coming up that not only in the environmental field, but you also saw some of those coming up at the airport. But we've got to have a lot of reserve at hand, and we also have to have some cash available for when these projects occur. So we're not allowed to invest any money in some of the high yield things, as you can imagine that a government agency can't. So we've got to keep cash on hand. So it's a delicate balancing act to try to keep the taxes low, make sure we've got enough cash on hand to do the environmental work that we need to do, because let me tell you, there is a boatload of that, as well as the new construction.
And you have your commission to thank for that, because every once in a while I'll get in a pickle and I'll be looking at the numbers. I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe we should raise taxes to cover this. And you hear Ken and Bobby and Michael instantly say, no, find another way, find another way. So thank your port commissioners for keeping that tax flat. They're adamant that we do that.
Oh yeah, the Unabomber wants to ask a question.
You need to unmute,
Yep.
Dave.
Yep. Just a quick question about the Point Roberts Ferry. Is it still being funded through the CARES Act through Whatcom County, or is that something the port is paying for at this point?
Yeah, the CARES Act funded it through November, and then that funding ran out. So the December, January, and now February is on the port. I'm hoping for another round of CARES Act money to go after that. So we'll see if the county gets some and if they share it. But right now it's on the port's dime.
And the situation that they're up in Port Roberts is just untenable. They'd have to go across the border in 2 locations. And most of the people trying to come down here to do anything in the United States are almost unworkable because they've got different border agents. Sometimes they can get through easily, sometimes they can't get through at all. So this has been a tremendous relief valve for the people of Point Roberts. They finally get a return on their tax assessments. They don't get much from the port, and they haven't in the past. So this is a chance for Point Roberts to realize the benefit of the port as well. Robbins, show yourself. Never mind. Anybody else? Dick, it's not like you not to have a question.
Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, you're still muted, Dick.
I don't have anything specific at this time. I'm listening very, very intently. Frankly, I was a little late getting on board, so I'll watch the video as soon as I can.
I want to know about that fish behind you. Where was that caught?
That was up on the Kenai River in Alaska back about, let's see, 1984. It was almost 83 pounds.
Nice.
Oh, there aren't many of those around anymore.
No.
Hey, I want to answer. I do want to answer something Ellen asked me about. Can I go ahead, Ellen?
Sure.
You asked me about what We Will is up to. I think this is of interest to you guys. We Will is supposed to be in Blaine today at 1 o'clock. There was an agent of the state government that went into a facility up there that had been open and did not identify themselves. And they're going back today, supposedly bringing additional assistance. And so We Will is up there videotaping that particular function at this time because the original visit by the state was not identified as being what they were. In this case, the business owner showed them around his restaurant and told him that he'd been able to stay open barely, and his wife is very ill and a combination of other things. And so there's a significant effort on their part to try to educate public and to support these small businesses that are struggling as bad as they are. So, and being that this group is small business oriented, I think that's worth sharing.
Thank you. Dan Robbins is unmuted.
I didn't have anything to say. Good presentation. I didn't see all of it, but part of it.
You're supposed to say you miss me.
Well, I miss Rob.
Yeah, you jerk.
And we gave you all the credit for the property tax decrease in case you didn't hear it.
There you go. Good.
And what was it, the Dan Robbins GoFund? Maybe not. GoFundMe. Alrighty,
No,
all that
good.
said,
Good presentation. I wish more people could have seen it.
well, we are going to upload it to YouTube, Dan, and I will send a notice to you and Dick Donahue, and maybe we can let the entire list know.
Good.
Bruce, when it's up and running, yeah, let's get some eyes on it because there's a lot of material here, and I want to thank the port once again, Rob Fix, Ken Bell, for making a really fabulous presentation. And if you want to send a PDF of the PowerPoint, we can make that available to the
We will
membership
post
as well.
Ellen, we'll post it on Common Threads as soon as we get it as well, because I think it was a great
Thank you.
presentation. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be sure to get you a PDF of that. And I really appreciate all the questions and just inviting me. Always fun to talk about the port.
And we will see you all on the waterfront.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Hey, Ken, give me a call sometime.